The power of personal story for the right to die with a doctor's help is facing the power of the courts in Canada. Bill 52 in Quebec would introduce euthanasia under the terms medical aid in dying. Residents in British Columbia are also challenging the federal law against physician-assisted suicide. In polls, more than two-thirds of Canadians support making it legal for doctors to help the terminally ill kill themselves. How do we make sense of right and wrong when care for the dying and vulnerable hangs in the balance? We'll talk with both sides of this debate and the founder of End-of-Life Palliative Care in Canada, Dr. Balfour Mount, as we ask, what does it mean to die a good death? This is Context, a look at life beyond the headlines. 70% of Canadians will die in hospital, and no one has thought as long and hard about how to do that as our first guest, Dr. Balfour Mount. He's worldwide known as the father of palliative care. He's a cancer doctor who is no stranger to suffering himself, having survived cancer 3 times, including esophageal cancer, which permanently affected his ability to sleep and speak. Dr. Mount, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome.
Honored to be here.
What great pictures we saw of your career as we opened the program. You have been at so many bedsides. Everyone is afraid of pain and suffering as they die. Tell us how palliative care specialists respond to that fear.
We respond to the fear, first of all, by realizing that a life-limiting illness affects that person, but also the family. Family in quotation marks, the significant others. So the first thing is the unit of care isn't just the person, but the person and their loved ones. The individuals who is ill, they're the captain of the team. And then the other members of the team will be as variable as our individual lives are. If you're living in the Arctic, it'll be one reality. If you're living in downtown urban Toronto or Montreal or London, Ontario, it'll be a very different reality. Who we hope would be there would be people who are able to look to, assess, and meet the physical needs, but also the psychological, social, and spiritual needs. Whole person care.
Is extreme pain and suffering avoidable in all cases of death?
The primary example that gets held up is patients with cancer, and they have good palliative care available. I will guarantee they do not need to fear that, because the vast majority, well over 90%, we can have their pain controlled so that they can relate to loved ones, so they're comfortable. In most cases, so they can be up and about unless they're limited otherwise. But for the occasional case where we cannot fully control the pain, that's the situation where we ask them, is this severe enough or unpleasant enough that you would rather be asleep?
Palliative sedative care.
Palliative
it's not the same
sedation
as killing.
Therapy.
Therapy. Yeah. And so they are completely unconscious then.
Yes.
You brought this to Canada.
I did a study to look at how patients die at the Royal Victoria Hospital. What we found was unacceptable care, endemic among those who were dying. There was poor control of pain and other symptoms. There was generally isolation, poor communication, neglect of the family, a spectrum of problems. And in looking into what could be done, I visited St. Christopher's Hospice in London, England. So I felt the question was, could hospice care be integrated into the general healthcare system? The word palliative came in because we couldn't use in Quebec the word hospice, because les hospices in France had a bad reputation of mediocrity. So I coined the term palliative medicine that later became accepted around the world as, because it's important why. Palliative means to improve the quality of. And that's what we're there for. We're not there to kill. We're there to improve the quality of living.
And your feeling about the wish to have medical aid in dying. Doctors killing, your schedule would say you're going to terminate patient X today or patient Y. What's your opinion of what Quebec is doing?
We're talking about euthanasia. We're talking about purposely killing patients, ending their lives. But we're calling it medical aid in dying. I thought that's what I've been doing for 40 years, calling it palliative care. The Bill 52, mentions the words palliative care 33 times. It mentions euthanasia no times. So what they're trying to do is get euthanasia accepted as a medical act, because then they can circumvent the Canadian criminal code. That's what's going on.
Okay, we are going to be back to talk more with you about this. We're going to take a moment to hear from the other side. But Dr. Mount, stay with us. And today we're raising, wow, literally questions of life and death. And our own Sheldon Neal wants to know some information from the studio audience on that. Sheldon.
That's correct, Lorna. And some of the deepest questions sound the simplest. And I'm actually here, Lorna, with Sister Sue Mosteller. If I said that correctly, Mosteller. Great. I know you're a sister of St. Joseph, an author as well as a leader in care for the disabled. I mean, how would you interpret the question that we're asking? I'm going to say it again. Should assisted suicide be an act of compassion or a criminal offense? How do you interpret and approach that question?
When you ask someone who has spent a lot of time with people with disabilities, marginalized people, and people who suffer, and also someone who has a deep belief in spirituality, I can only say I have a very profound belief in life as a gift, coming from an outside source, coming from a higher power, coming from God. And this is a total gift which we didn't ask for, but we received. And my life, and I think everybody's life, is a mystery. And I think death is, of course, our greatest mystery, our greatest passage. And for me, I would really like to live myself into that mystery of death and into that passage. I wouldn't want to in any way take the place of the one who made me and determine when I would pass from now to the next life. I would much prefer to wait and let that happen. I hope I have someone like Dr. Belfour-Mont near me at the time, because I have a fear. I don't know what that passage will be. I certainly am not a great sufferer, but I want to just let God do the work that God does and trust that I'm going to something far greater than this life.
Thank you so much for sharing them. And we want to know what you think at home. Is assisted suicide an act of compassion or a criminal offense? Help us drive the conversation further by sending an email, call us, or reach us by Twitter or Facebook.
Up next, the case for euthanasia, a leading advocate and a minister of parliament.
I may not request euthanasia, by the way, but I would like it to be there if I think I want it.
If a person chooses euthanasia, someone else is going to do the killing.
But when you don't want it anymore, I think it's cruel.
You treat the pain, you don't kill the patient.
I should have control on my body.
I object to it because I think it's morally wrong to kill another person.